Okay, here we go. Welcome to my garage where I keep my toys. My main toy is a little bit dirty. I don't know whether it's going to show up or not. This is my Goldwing, and it is a 1977. I've got the spark plug wires up off of there right now. And it only had 28,000 miles on it or so when I bought it. And never even tried to start it with the carburetors that were on it because they set with gasoline in them. For several years, which rendered them not unrebuildable, but for the price of rebuild, I could put the single carburetor on and lose what I felt were a lot of the inherent issues with the Goldwing. Now, what I'm going to be talking about here is the bonnet that I built for it, but we'll get to that later. I'm going to show you here. These are some of the modifications I had to go through. Alright, hopefully there's enough sun you can see it. The original fuel pump is not capable of pumping enough fuel to the carburetor. It is stock, it is a good fuel pump, it just isn't capable. So I had to add the small electric fuel pump. There are vacuum operated fuel pumps in the neighborhood also that you can get for them, and you have vacuum ports on this particular kit that I got from well, I'm not going to mention his name yet online because I haven't cleared permission to do this. He may not like everything I've had to do, but all I'm trying to say is these are things I had to do in order for this system to work for me. One, the electric fuel pump additive to the kit. Two, fuel regulator, setting it for 3.5 pounds PSI. Pounds of fuel going down to the carburetor. If you have too much fuel going down to the carburetor, too much pressure, the natives are restless. If you have too much pressure, it blows past the fuel shutoff valve on the float inside the carburetor and dumps down the manifold and dissipates into bad places in the engine. Found that out the hard way. Now then, the throttle hookup is really simple. You can't see it right now. I'm going to be modifying the shock or the choke in a little bit here. We'll get to that and get that on film too. But this one right here is showing you the kit. There's the carburetor kit. And there's some things that I've done to it already in preparation for the bonnet. Wrap these in just a little bit of insulation material. And got them ready to go. And there's my throttle linkage right here. There's a piece there, and it locks down back here on the screw to hold the throttle. And then you can see the rest of the throttle going through. Now let's talk about a little bit of a few things that I had to go on to make this carburetor work with the engine on this particular bike, because this is not stock pipes, and that's probably a major ordeal. And because they're not stock, they're going to allow more fuel through, which is going to mean you have to rejet the carburetor. Now, all I know is this bike. I don't know any other bike, but I know this bike. So, main jet is a 132.5. 132.5 Mikuni, main jet. Another modification I had to go through, because I would get up into the upper end of the range, the RPMs, and she'd start popping, indicating a lean out. I had to go in on the other side of the carburetor. I'll show you the other side of the carburetor a little later on. And had to take, and I have a very small, almost jewelry classification of drill bits. I pulled out the auxiliary jet, sits behind the screw. I'll show you here in a moment. I got a extra carburetor, extra Solex, right here. Okay, the main jet is down in that crevice, and right up there, that little screw right there is a cap, and the jet is behind that. And what I did with the small drill set is I found what drill would slide through that jet. I went to the very next size up in their line, which is only a thousandths or so. 5/10, I think. Larger than original. Put it all back together again. Solution found. Now it gets more gas and more air at the upper end. Everything links in together. I did not change the air jet. Air jet's still a stock 55. Okay, now for the bonnets. Here's the reason why I found that the bonnet was needed. I got a lot of different projects going on here in my shop right now. This is a man shop. This is my man cave. Alright? And I get out here whenever I can. Now, and as it's a man cave is a man cave is a man cave. Alright, now, one of the things that I read about was the need for atomizing fuel in the manifold. Well, fuel in the manifold can be caused by two things. Cold manifold, true. You know, the fuel drops out of the air, because, you know, forms condensation again, goes back to its natural liquid state, so to speak. It's not vaporized at that point. And then it drops to the manifold and runs down the bottom of the manifold to be picked up later, ingested to the engine when you don't want it to be. So, got me a pair of these. Got me a bunch more than just a pair right now. And cut this section out, and then made circles in it that would fit the old original carburetor intake, and I mounted them at the end of the manifold where it goes in. Where the carburetor is, it would be sitting right here, but instead there's a manifold. So now that forms a little bit of an aeration or atomization of globule fuel. That takes care of the big ones. Now, the other thing, from reading about these things on Volkswagen pages and inputs, some people have mentioned that the manifold doesn't stay warm enough unless you have the bypass working, which takes your exhaust fumes and lets them pass between the two heads on the boxer engine on the Volkswagen, and that preheats the manifold. Well, on a Goldwing, especially a 77, you really don't have a lot of options for your fuel. To get, you know, your exhaust up there, or to route your coolant up there. But there is a coolant tube that runs, going back outside to show you this, there is a coolant tube that runs right there and right over there. Okay. I said, well, okay, I'm close to it. It's close to the manifold. It might be picking up some heat, but not enough. So I built a bonnet that fits on, goes over 3/4 of the manifold, and then as the engine warms, and you can really tell the difference in it, as the engine warms, it warms up the manifolds and your choke time is less on a cold night, and you're more consistent running down the road. So, I went to the local big box hardware store, and bought me some aluminum mud flaps with the step style implantations on them. Nice and, man, I'm ugly. Anyway, and as I get older, I get uglier. So, then, I did some experimentation and found where I could put everything that I wanted to place on there. And then I bolted them to the original manifold, chrome manifold covers that would normally mount on the bottom, on the top of the carburetor up here. Mounted them here. Okay, great. Now, how am I going to get those to hold? The next level, out comes the hammy solution to all unnecessary problems. Polypropylene cutting tape, cutting cover box. Women know the name of this thing right off the bat. You cut your chicken on it. Protects your countertop. Polypropylene. Cut it down into this. You can see the edges on the polypropylene already. Cut it down. Marked off. Right here you can see all my calculations for it. You can't read them. I probably tell you where they are, with some variation. That's what I did right here. Okay? Then this, I'll show you later. A hole here and a hole there. Matches up to the original where the spark plug holder went. And boom, and it clamps onto the manifolds. And bingo, bango, you got yourself a done deal. So for right this moment, I'm going to cut off and put those bonnets together and get them and put them on the bike. Back in a bit. Those are now mounted on, and the spark plugs are on, and there we go, folks. The bonnet is on it, and we can see the carburetor. Alright, comes up from the top. That's not as important for the heat as what I originally thought. By putting the bonnet on it, it keeps the heat from the motor, from the water pipe right here, up on the manifold, preheating the manifold, helping the fuel-air mixture to stay atomized. Now next, we're going to work on, I'll show you the other side. Oops, I left my flashlight on. I'll show you the other side. Alright. It's simple. It just helps keep more heat on the manifold underneath, making it more consistent. Believe me, it really does a good job. It really does. Okay, now, top view from the rider position. If you're looking down, there you are. And okay, the next part of this is going to be the choke, utilizing the original, as much of the original Honda choke cable as possible to hook up a manual choke for this carburetor. Okay, here's the deal, folks. This is what I've done. Original Goldwing choke cable. I've taken approximately that much off of it. Then went in and I made this little doohickey right here. It goes on this side. Thing right here. It's already there. This much is already there. I took another piece of ham radio operator's favorite material, 8-inch welding brazing rod, bent it and soldered it to here. Now, I test drove the solder joints and everything else for a long time before I put the cable on. So, you know, if you're already seeing that as an issue, then, well, that's, you know, solder. Almost everybody should know how to solder if they're going to have a motorcycle, that's for sure. Okay, then, and I made this little doohickey here with a screw, the holes that clamps the things there, and this is not tight on this particular carburetor because I got to wrestle it onto the carburetor that is going on the bike here. This is my test configuration carburetor. I know, people will say, well, that seems like an expensive way to do things, but not really. It's for an experimenter like me, having a spare carburetor here, you know, is not a bad ordeal. But as you can see, I laid it out, shortened it, put the rubber boot back here on the end of the cable. Now, when I cut the cable, slid the cable completely out, cut the shield, and then before I do anything else, I take a 16th inch drill. And because I cut it with a Dremel, it melts plastic on the inside. So you take a 16th inch drill and finger wrap it and pull the plastic out. It works just fine. Put the rubber boot cap back on there that came with the original cable. This is just an old pen spring. And built myself a clamp here. And as you can see, alright, there you go. Now here's the interesting thing. Once you pull the cable up, then the fast idle will be there, and when you release the cable, it'll still be on fast idle. That way you don't over choke it. If you walk away from the bike or whatever, just push the cable in. It'll stay on fast idle, continue to warm up. I think that's a good feature myself. Up to you. Like I say, these are just things that worked for me. Also, I was going to mention too, when I drill jets, I drill jets by hand. That way, you're not varnishing, you're not making the hole too big. When you're talking, you know, 18 thousandths or 17 thousandths, 5/10ths drill sizes, you know, power drilling can make a big difference. So I always use finger drilling. Now with this here, all that is just one of those cable end pieces with the long threads on it. This is the cap end where the cable would go in. I just notched up and drilled on the drill press there, the 16th inch drill, cable through it, put a nut on it, cinch it up tight, and then I'll just take this whole thing out and put it on the bike. Alright, see you in a little bit. Here we are. There's the choke. Throttle open and locked open. There's how that works. Push it in. Alright. Connected and everything else is all good up there. And It's Iowa hot and humid today. Get on the high idle, okay? It'll all work in together. And of course, the air cleaner in there. Need a little more high idle. There she's up on high idle. Smooth sailing. The bonnets are on it. Lighting is up and running. She needs a bath. She needs a bath big time. Okay, well, if anybody's going to do this project, you don't have to do it the way I did it. You don't have to follow anything in any of the directions I gave you. All I can tell you is that that's what worked out for me. Shot out of here.